So yesterday, a Guild Wars 2 YouTuber and streamer, Mighty Teapot, decided to make a YouTube video talking about Guild Wars 3. Now, I have been kind of discussing the end of Guild Wars 2 for a while now. I feel like I could add quite a bit to this discussion. We're going to be doing a little bit of React Hell. So we're going to watch the video. It is a little bit long. And then I'll be giving some of my thoughts as we go through these points.
Another day, another new MMO dies. New World, Ashes of Creation, Riot MMO back to the drawing board. Is there anything that can save us from playing the same games we've been playing for 10 years and not just be a temporary vacation before inevitably imploding?
It's going to be Guild Wars 3.
Well, actually, yeah, there is. It's Guild Wars 3. Let's get straight to the point here. You might be wondering why I'm talking about a game that hasn't even been announced yet, and you'd be right to wonder. So let's talk about exactly why Guild Wars 3 is likely to be announced this year and why I think a full release is probably within 2 to 3 years.
I think it's probably going to be released before 2 to 3 years. We are probably going to be getting news on it very soon, and then it will be released very soon after. That's kind of the way ArenaNet has always done things. Like, they're going to keep it under wraps for as long as possible until they know it's going to work, and then they're going to announce it.
Most important thing to get out of the way is to simply talk about what's happening at ArenaNet, the studio that develops the...
So this is the biggest tell, right? Like, all of this video is largely speculation, but in my opinion, the biggest tell is what is happening at ArenaNet. Seeing what the studio can put out when they want to grind on Guild Wars 2 and seeing what they have been putting out, that is the biggest tell. Like, there's no way 400 people, 300 people are making one map in 4 months. Like, 0% chance.
Guild Wars franchise. First of all, ArenaNet has been hiring for an unannounced Unreal Engine project as far back as 2021, so this has been cooking for a long time, which is a good thing if we want a game soon, because, well, MMOs take a long time to develop. Guild Wars 2 itself took about 6 years. Now, at the time, a few job listings didn't really stir up a huge amount.
This is just a minor nitpick. Whoever uses Reddit in not dark mode, I mean, anybody who uses Reddit in general, yeah, you know where I'm going with this, but especially in bright mode,
of discussion, it was mostly assumed to be some kind of companion game, not a full-fledged MMO at all. However, the job listings continued to pile up, and over time became more specific, from a simple Unreal project to a Unreal MMO in an existing fantasy IP, and then, more recently, the listing that has really got people thinking just outright confirms that the unannounced project is an MMO set in the Guild Wars universe. I wonder what on earth that could be.
Yeah, it's Guild Wars 3. It's like, as soon as they started saying an unannounced MMO project in an existing universe, ArenaNet has like one IP. What other IPs do they own? Like, of course it's gonna be Guild Wars.
So yeah, it is a near certainty that Guild Wars 3, or whatever they're going to call it, is currently in development, and likely fairly deep into development at that. However, that alone wouldn't get me fully...
This is kind of the biggest stance. I think it's further in development than you think it is. Like, I think Teapot thinks it's pretty far along. I think it's even further along than he does. Like, I've been kind of listening to that canary in the coal mine for a while on the decline of the Guild Wars 2 development, and I feel like I sensed the shift from developers in Guild Wars 2 going to the unannounced project pretty fucking early on. Like, within a couple of releases, I think I was like, yo, something's happening.
Locked in on Guild Wars 3 being pretty close. The actual elephant in the room is that the next Guild Wars 2 expansion has not been confirmed.
So this is another giant sign for people that aren't really tracking. ArenaNet always releases information, or they always release like a statement, a blog post, something to communicate. Like, at least recently they do. Like, ever since Soto Timeline, they've tried to up their communication, and they have like outwardly done interviews and stuff with games journals to where they're like, hey, this is coming out, we're doing this, and that is not happening now. So why is that not happening now? And it's we'll see.
At all, despite very public speculation from the community that, well, there isn't one in development right now. To be clear, I'm not saying that ArenaNet hasn't dropped the expansion.
I don't necessarily think that there's nothing in development. I just think that they are trying to figure out a way to minimize the marketing hell damage that they're in right now because people are scared. I think that there is another Guild Wars 2 expansion, if that's what you want to call it, coming. I think that there are likely multiple Guild Wars 2 expansions coming, but it's not going to look like the expansions that we've seen thus far.
Name, storyline, trailer, and so on, that would make any sense. The current expansion isn't over yet. I'm specifically pointing out that the next expansion hasn't been confirmed to exist. For contrast here, the current expansion, Visions of Eternity, was confirmed all the way back in December 2023. Now, I should say that the circumstances there were different. The game had just shifted from a new yearly expansion model, and well, there were some anxieties that the game might flop over dead.
So this is kind of what I'm talking about, right? Is that prior to this, their communication has always been kind of shitty up until, like, I want to say after End of Dragons, and then even after End of Dragons, when we were dealing with the Gaela Delve tunnel situation, that part was also like really shitty because they didn't tell us, like, everybody was expecting Living World, like real shit. Everybody was expecting Living World, and then they were like, oh, we're going to this mini expansion model and you're not getting elite specs and we're gonna figure something else out. And then we got Soto, and everybody was kind of hyped for the first time in a little while. A lot of people were disappointed as well. I was kind of more disappointed than I was hyped because we finally made it to Cantha, which is where we wanted to go for so long. Like, if they released core Guild Wars 2 and then they said we're gonna follow the Guild Wars 1 path trajectory, and they went from core to Cantha to Ilona, I think it would have been better. The fact that we went from core into the jungle, into Ilona, into Cantha was a mistake. They needed to ride that hype train, like of that immediate Guild Wars nostalgia that people had directly into Cantha, and then they needed to like Living World season that shit out, so that way you go to Raisu Palace, you go to all the little Cantha locations. Let's continue with the video.
So the studio very much wanted to assure the player base that the game had a long future ahead of it. But there have been no such assurances for what's happening after this expansion, and because of the rampant speculation about the future of the game, the same anxieties are very much back. And it will be a completely trivial thing for the studio to simply say, yeah, there is another expansion in development, and that's it.
So that is a good point. In the past, they've said, oh, we have something cooking for you guys, don't worry. Like, they're really vague with what they say, and typically that's enough. Like, as long as it's like, hey, something is going to be released, right? That is kind of what the player base is looking for. And without just even that, it's like, all right, what's happening? Because it's so easy. Grouch can make a blog post and just say, hey guys, don't worry, an expansion's on the way, we're working it, you know, we got something exciting to share, it's not there yet, don't worry about it, you know. But you also don't want to mislead, right? They're trying to balance the PR and marketing capability with what they can actually disclose without undermining that, right? Like, leaks and all of these things have been a problem. So
mind, the way Guild Wars 2 expansions work is that they are essentially back-to-back. When one ends, which will be in August approximately, about 3 months later the next one will drop, which is really not a long time away. So
this also is a side effect. The reason why the back-to-back nature exists is solely because it's a buy to play game, right? If they don't have a steady stream of stuff to sell that is new, a new box to sell you, they're not making money. And yeah, the gem store and this and that, but they also don't really heavily monetize their gem store. So
sooner or later, we will be finding out what's cooking. The combination of the job listings and the lack of Guild Wars 2 expansion confirmation, in my opinion, makes it extremely likely that there is no current Guild Wars 2 expansion in development, and that Guild Wars 3 will be announced sometime this year, likely after the finale of Visions of Eternity, and the next year for Guild Wars 2 will serve as a bridge year while 3 is finished. Interestingly, the Guild Wars franchise even has a system to connect games together, called the Hall of Monuments, where
I shared some thoughts on Hall of Monuments. That was my last video before this React content. So if you want to know about what I think about that, watch that video. I'm not going to go over it again here.
achievements in Guild Wars 1 will unlock cosmetics and special titles in Guild Wars 2. I think it's probable that Guild Wars 2 will have the same system, which will then take the place of the missing Guild Wars 2 expansion. Basically a victory lap for the game that will task players with completing everything to get some fun unlocks in the next game. There is actually some precedent for ArenaNet leaning into systems like this, by the way. In a year-long content drought, ArenaNet ran something called Season of the Dragons, which rewarded players for playing through the entire game from start to finish while waiting for an expansion to launch.
So I actually brought up Seasons of the Dragons as a good example of what Hall of Monuments might look like. I don't necessarily think that they are going to add a new achievement. They might actually add a new achievement collection in. That's what the Return to achievements were, is that they were literally just a copy paste of the existing achievements. So if you already had the existing achievements completed, you still had to go back and redo them to like qualify for the Return to achievement, right? And I think that that's probably a good way of doing it if they don't want to make it super crazy. So if they want to keep me playing the game, then they have to do like kind of like a soft reset. And so instead of soft resetting your account or making, oh, you got to like 100% the whole game, which is kind of what the Hall of Monuments was in Guild Wars 1 in some way, they got to do Seasons of the Dragon style, where they put in a new category. They kind of put the same achievements in there and it's like, all right, go do it again.
Oh look, it's breaking news time. During the editing for this video, something rather interesting happened. NCSoft, the parent company of ArenaNet, filed a trademark for Mistbound.
So there's a lot of speculation on what Mistbound means. Now, is it Guild Wars 2 Mistbound? Is it something along the, is it a standalone title? Is it a card game? Is it, whatever, right? I think that Mistbound could be a footer. You know what I mean? So I think that Guild Wars 2 and Guild Wars 3 and Guild Wars 4 is not a very good practice, right? I think the fact that the dragon with the 2 and all that stuff, I think that the powers that be probably regret that sequencing, right? Like, because you don't have World of Warcraft 5, you don't have World of Warcraft 6. You have World of Warcraft Midnight. You have blah, right? You don't have Guild Wars 1. You have Guild Wars Reforged, right? And I think Mistbound, if it is not a Guild Wars 2 expansion, it is probably going to be Guild Wars 3. It's going to be Guild Wars Mistbound, and that is going to be the title.
And because this typically happens,
so that way, you could get around the whole name recognition thing, right? Like, you want to establish that this is a Guild Wars title without having to add Guild Wars 3, right? You say, hey, this is Guild Wars Mistbound, and it's in the Guild Wars universe, and it's new. Awesome, right?
Before some kind of announcement from ArenaNet, I do want to quickly comment on it. I think it's fairly unlikely that Guild Wars 3 would have a subtitle, so I don't think that this is Guild Wars 3. I also don't think it's a Guild Wars 2 expansion, or at least not in the same.
Dude, it's not going to be Guild Wars 3 Mistbound. It's going to be Guild Wars Mistbound. I think that's the way that they're going to do it. They're going to follow the WoW strat, if anything, right?
Way we would expect it now. If this is some kind of Guild Wars 2 release, I'd expect it to be different, likely a bridge between Guild Wars 2 and 3, like I mentioned previously. The reason I think that is because if they have been planning an expansion all along, they would have just said so to quell all of the uncertainty. However, if they are cooking something for 2 that isn't what we've been getting for the last few years, then it would make sense to keep it a bit under wraps so as to not set expectations. Some people might say Mistbound is the long-awaited Guild Wars card game, but I don't think so. ArenaNet may have called the Guild Wars 1 relaunch Reforged, but I find it hard to believe that they'd name a card game Mistbound when Riftbound exists. But stranger things have happened, so who knows? Regardless, the Mistbound thing is a very interesting curveball, and quite an exciting one at that. It doesn't change my perspective really on the timeline for Guild Wars 3. If anything, it accelerates it. If Mistbound is some kind of connection between Guild Wars 2 and 3, then it's entirely possible that both may end up getting announced before Visions of Eternity is even over, because they can't announce a tie-in expansion without announcing the next game too. It's funny, there are actually quite a lot of good opportunities to drop a new title over the next few months, and I will be very much paying attention to all of them to see what happens. Exciting times. All right.
I do think that we'll probably hear something at like a Summer's Game Fest or something like that. I think that ArenaNet's done a good job of like putting placement in those locations. Like the marketing team came out of hibernation. They actually got some funding. And so I think that they are definitely going to capitalize more on like what gamers are paying attention to. And since every streamer, like every big name streamer watches those things, it's way bigger than it was in the past, right? You can get a lot of eyes on your product like pretty easily.
So we're on board with Guild Wars 3 existing, but why won't it just burn brightly before landing in the foundry of failed creations like the rest of the new MMOs? Well, I think the best way to answer that question is to look at why all of the recent failed MMO projects actually failed. To be frank, there is one word to describe Ashes of Creation and New World: amateur. These projects primarily failed, in my opinion, thanks to a lack of experience in the MMO genre, leading to extremely poor decisions and then impossible to recover situations. That's quite charitable to Ashes, but you get the point. New World did a
So Ashes of Creation never existed. I personally saw that shit and knew from jump that it was gonna fail. The scoping was like way out of line. Like it's like, oh, this is gonna be the greatest MMO. You can do everything. It's like pure sandbox. You just do. No way in hell some indie studio kickstarted that shit and just like funded it. And it's legit. Like anybody that knows anything about projects, I had zero faith that Ashes of Creation actually was going to launch.
full 180 from PvP to PvE and released a completely unfinished game, which immediately and permanently ruined its reputation. And while it could have recovered and tragically was in a fairly good state shortly before its shutdown announcement, ultimately the devs just spent so much time wrangling the engine and figuring out a regular content plan that the game never had a chance to fully recover before presumably the money ran out. Ashes was in some senses similar, but infinitely more extreme. The most overscoped and overdue project since Star Citizen, led by a guy who thought releasing a Battle Royale version of the game was a good idea. I think that says it all. Clown Fiesta doesn't even begin to do it justice. There are many videos explaining exactly what went down with Intrepid and Ashes of Creation, and I leave it as an exercise to the viewer if you want to dive down that rabbit hole. My point in explaining this is to contrast both of those failed projects with ArenaNet. ArenaNet has a very long history in the MMO industry and has not one, but two highly successful and critically acclaimed MMOs.
So yeah, ArenaNet found a sweet spot where they got into the industry early enough that they can still make all of these mistakes throughout their development cycle and still come out at the end with like successful product. Like, so both in Guild Wars 1 and in Guild Wars 2, they've had a lot of different lessons learned. And I hope to God that whoever is working there and working on the next project recognizes some of those flaws, because like there are problems that they had in Guild Wars 1 that they had in Guild Wars 2 as well. The problems that we're having in Guild Wars 2 that people have been complaining about, or that are fundamentally like unfun or problematic for the studio, they need to like address them up front and put the proper plan in place to prevent them from being implemented. And mostly it has to do with bloat and sustainability. So in Guild Wars 1, when they were pumping out expansions, they were able to drop an expansion in like, I don't know, 7 months, 8 months, something like that. Like Guild Wars 1, they were like dropping expansions. And it's partly because that was their primary business model, right? It was like box to box funding. But what ended up happening is that they ended up with like a giant unsustainable mess with a bajillion skills, and they were adding new classes every expansion. And every expansion was not an expansion, it was like a standalone campaign. So you just ended up with this giant, like, overflowing balance problem. And in Guild Wars 2, now we're looking at the same thing, except instead of like, hey, we have to release an expansion, and with that, we have to develop another 130 unique skills for every class alongside 2 new classes. Now we're dealing with elite specializations that they have to balance, and each balance patch, there's always somebody somewhere that's like, dude, Druid has been broken, like the skill on Druid has been broken for X number of fucking years now. And the problem is that there's not enough devs, time, and space in the world to do a full comb of everything and make sure everything works. So some professions, the most egregious professions, get nerfs, while the ones that are like a tier 2 problem or a tier 3 problem, those get completely untouched, and then those end up running rampant for another year, and then they'll get fixed later. And then in the meantime, you have a new expansion coming out and new shit added. And so I think that type of problem when it comes to sustainability and bloat needs to 100,000% be addressed, because this is a problem that existed in Guild Wars 1. They tried it in Guild Wars 2, and then what are they going to do in Guild Wars 3? In addition to that, they also had too many fucking game modes in both games. Like, we had random arenas, team arenas, Codex arenas, Heroes Ascent, Guild versus Guild, all with like different meta strats, all of this stuff. Trying to like manage that situation on top of general PvE content, it's too much for any team to really handle. Like, unless you have like 3 studios and each one of them is kind of independently developing from each other, which isn't really how things work, there's really no way to sustain it. Guild Wars 2 has the same problem, where you have a pretty set number of man hours, and they have to be split between PvE, PvP, world versus world, and even to some degree like end game PvE content. And so when you rack and stack it, it's like, okay, what is the most engaged with? What is the most valuable? What is the most likely area? Like, what's the best ROI? And so I think that's why world versus world and structured PvP got backburnered. That's the reason why raids got backburnered. And it's all just because like they overscoped it. They were able to make it work because of the time they got into the market. Like, if they had these problems in 2026 on release, it would have ended up like a New World situation where they would have gotten blasted with negative press immediately. Everybody would have said the game's dead and moved on. And they still got hit with a lot of that. They still got hit with the game's dead trope for like years and years now. Like, people even to this day still think that Guild Wars 2 was a dead game.
Guild Wars 1 and Guild Wars 2. I think it's particularly exciting to note that Guild Wars 1, which entered maintenance mode during the Guild Wars 2 era, actually very recently restarted development with a successful semi-relaunch thing called Guild Wars Reforged.
Guild Wars Reforged is sick, by the way. You should definitely play it if you haven't. I think that a lot of Guild Wars 2 players had never played Guild Wars 1, and I think that even if you are literally just looking for a new game to play, you should try it out. It is an old school style game. You definitely feel some of that older style game development there. Like, if you were playing like, you know, Diablo 2, for instance.
Yeah, at least one Reforged title worked out well. Incidentally, the restarting of Guild Wars 1 development is very much an indication that Guild Wars 2 development will not be stopping even in a Guild Wars 3 reality.
Yeah, they're not gonna make that mistake again. I think the studio is taking it very seriously not to straight mothball the game. Like, they are going to be releasing stuff in Guild Wars 2. It's probably not going to be what Teapot says it is, but they're definitely going to keep a team, to keep the lights on, to keep things moving forward, and they're not going to do what they did with Guild Wars 1.
It won't be the main focus anymore, which will of course reduce content output, but I think
So realistically, it's not the main focus right now. I'm gonna come out and say it. Guild Wars 2 right now is not the main focus for ArenaNet. They are doing enough to try to minimize the problems, right? Like, we just had a 6 month, more or less 6 month drought period. We're rolling into another 4 month ish drought period. We did get some new legendaries, we did get things like that. Realistically though, like, adding a legendary into the game, like outside of the asset development part of it, where it's like, oh, you build in these new effects for a character, how much dev work does it actually take, especially with these accessories and items that are largely like material sinks? You know, they're not building in giant quest trains like they did in the Heart of Thorns era with like Nevermore or the Shortbow. They are just literally building in these, like, okay, here's a list of materials, go talk to this guy, there might be a little collection or a little event chain thing of existing events to go do, and they're racking it. Like, I cannot believe anybody that thinks that 360 people, 400 people have their primary focus on Guild Wars 2 that hasn't been the case since before Secrets of the Obscure. I think Secrets of the Obscure was the test bed where they peeled off the team. I would be willing to bet it's like maybe a third of the studio, if that, like probably 60 to 80 people.
ArenaNet's goal is very much to run all 3 games at the same time, as all 3
So they can 100% do that. Now, even if they do drop the dev team of Guild Wars 2 down to, like, let's say 25 people, what we've seen 2 weeks do with pretty, we don't have a new Guild Wars 1 campaign. We didn't have a whole lot added, but we did get some new dungeons. We did get some new heroes added in Guild Wars 1, and little things like that go a long way to keep that game going. Like adding in the hardcore modes or the Doom's Covenant or the Melandri's Accord modes. Those little things go a long way, and I think that in Guild Wars 2, we're going to be seeing similar stuff where it's like you're not getting a new map, you're not getting this, you're not getting that, but they're going to be adding in cool things to go check out.
will likely serve somewhat different audiences in addition to the overlap. This does seem to be a bit of an industry trend too. RuneScape and World of Warcraft are the 2 examples that come to mind, where the developers run multiple versions of the game that are very distinct from one another so that players can play the one that they prefer. Another advantage to this strategy is also that you can bridge content release gaps in each game with content from others, which encourages players to engage with multiple titles within the same ecosystem. So it's a bit of a win-win for everyone involved. We got slightly derailed there, but I think it's safe to say that ArenaNet are pretty good at making these games. Guild Wars 1 and Guild Wars 2 are both long-running and very good. Additionally, and perhaps
out of all the studios, if they said that they were going to come out and make another MMO, like, it should be pretty easy for them to do that. They know the landscape, they know the engines, they know the market. They've been in this business for a long time.
more importantly, ArenaNet have had a lot of time to learn from the journey of developing 2 full-grown MMOs over 20 years. I mentioned development and content planning as a key mistake that New World in particular made, and amusingly, it's also the main mistake ArenaNet made with Guild Wars 2. In fact, I think Guild Wars 2 would almost certainly be significantly more popular than it is today if they had launched with a better development strategy.
It would 1000% be more popular. It would 1000% be more popular. The fact that every year they had to go back to the drawing board and try to figure out what they're going to do with this game was the biggest problem. And in Guild Wars 3, they need to just come up with a plan that's sustainable. It's the project management triangle, quality, price, time. Those three elements need to be synced up in a way that's sustainable for the studio, because the whole, we're just going to give you free shit in Living World Season 1, but we're going to delete it. Living World Season 2, we're going to give you free shit and it's going to stay in the game. Then you have your first expansion, and then you have more free shit, and then there was like a year-long drought, and then you have Path of Fire, and then free shit, End of Dragons, a free map with a free update. And then when they did when they did the Seasons of the Dragons thing, they went back and gave everything away for free again. Great for people, right? Bad for the studio.
Of having to flip between a few different models, which
the new expansion model, as frustrating as it is a realistic, sustainable model. They did figure it out. They finally buckled down and figured out what works for the studio based on the amount of people they're willing to devote to it. They figured out the man hours to cost to what deliverables they can actually deliver. Now, are those deliverables really satisfying in an MMO environment based on what the competition is producing? That's up to you. For me, sure. Like if you're only playing for 10 hours a week, 15 hours a week, I'm sure that you have very little complaints. If you are a new player to the game who has all of this backlog content to do that's still relevant because it's horizontal, I'm sure that you're not really all that upset that the new patch doesn't have a million things for you to do. But we'll see. I mean, I think that if they had released with this model, the game probably would have been more successful. I think Heart of Thorns was hype. I think Path of Fire was hype, but they were literally burning the candle at both ends during that period of the studio's development.
Led to major content drought, content quality, and multiple game mode support issues. Trust me, it wasn't a good time. The point is, ArenaNet are definitely aware of that blunder, and I think it will likely be one of their key focus points when planning out a strategy for Guild Wars 3. And there's a good reason to think that they have a plan too. The current yearly Guild Wars 2 expansion model, combined with releasing on Steam, has proven to be both stable and maintainable while also being extremely profitable for ArenaNet, leading to a strong recovery in the game after quite a rough patch in the game's history. I'd very much expect a similar model to come into play right from the start of Guild Wars 3. On top,
I think that's probably true. I think that they are gonna pay extra close attention to managing expectations and being able to produce a quality product without sacrificing stuff on their end. That's the biggest thing.
Of this, because ArenaNet already have multiple live games generating revenue for the studio.
This is another thing, is that Guild Wars 2 is not going anywhere and Guild Wars 1 is not going anywhere. Guild Wars Reforged actually made quite a bit of money pretty recently during their last earnings. So they have 2 weeks doing an excellent job kind of revitalizing that game.
They don't need to do a new world and release the game long before it's ready. They have the funding to continue to develop the game and make sure it's finished, even if they do want to switch things up a little bit. Personally, I'd want to see a full roadmap and content plan for at least a year already in place by the time the game launches.
I don't necessarily think that we need a content roadmap. I think what they need to do is they need to release a finished game up front and then immediately discuss their thoughts on what the release cycle looks like. And I would advise, in the event any ArenaNet person is actually listening to my commentary, which you never know, right? I'm gonna say I doubt it, but you never know. I think that they need to give themselves additional leeway, even if it is an unpopular timeline. So let's say that they release the game and it's finished. The first campaign is finished, which it needs to be finished. Do not make the Blizzard blunder where you release Diablo 4 and you don't kill Diablo. Don't do that. People don't like that. What you need to do is release a finished campaign, and then you need to release a timeline. And if your timeline is realistically, 2 years, you need to say we are releasing it every 30 months. Right, we are releasing a new finished campaign every 30 months or every 3 years. You need to give yourself additional time, because you might get halfway through dev and then realize people don't actually like this shit, or people don't actually want this shit, and we need to come up with it. We need to tweak it, rework it. You need to do something. And I think that the studio being upfront and giving themselves that cushion prevents a lot of the thrash down the road with community management. Because if you say, yeah, we're gonna do it every 2 years, and then they have to release a statement saying like, oh yeah, it's delayed, what happens, right? Like, people are going to be pissed off. Whereas you can just say, hey, like, it's every 3 years, and then every 3 years you release the thing. But if you get done with it at the 2.5 year mark, or at the 2 and 2 month mark, then you have additional time to start working on the next thing, right? So it all rolls. The project management is critical. Like, make accurate assessments, break the bad news up front, and just say, hey, this is our new project. We want to do it right. We still have Guild Wars 2, we still have Guild Wars 1, but we're gonna make sure everything is fully cooked. So that way, when every time a new experience drops, it is the best shit ever, and nobody has anything to complain about, or they have minimal things to complain about.
Something I think is more or less mandatory for any serious new MMO project. It's not enough just to make a splash. You have to convince players that your game isn't going anywhere and is therefore worth investing some time into, even over the games they're currently playing, which is no mean feat. The current MMOs all have their audiences, and
all the current MMOs except Guild Wars 2 suck, by the way.
They are very good at serving them.
I'm going to tell you right now that most games out on the market, like, I have been looking for alternative MMOs to play. There's not a single one that's worth playing, including World of Warcraft.
Moving on from general incompetence, something else that prevents many newer MMOs from taking off is, to put it mildly, anti-consumer business practice. Because MMOs are expensive to develop and run, or simply out of standard greed, it's pretty common for projects to be infected with the vile filth that is pay-to-win, loot boxes, battle passes, or whatever ultra-aggressive slop microtransactions happen to be popular that day.
So, when it comes to monetization in video games, especially when you are counting out the subscription model, it can be very, very challenging to actually make money in gaming. You have to convince in some way to swipe. I don't necessarily think that Guild Wars 2 is not pay to win. And I don't necessarily think that the structure that Guild Wars 2 has, even though it does have pay to win elements in it, is bad. Now, I know the whole pay to win thing is going to be a hot controversy situation, but what I mean by that is you can literally swipe for almost anything in the game. Now, you could swipe for gold through the gold to gems conversion. You can, in essence, then swipe for items. You can swipe for clears in the game, because you could buy a raid clear. I did it. I bought a raid clear, not with my credit card, but with in-game items, right? I paid a team of people gold to give me a clear. Well, how did I get that gold? I mean, I didn't swipe for it, but I could have, right? And when it comes to cosmetics or quality of life items, you need to be very, very careful in how you choose it. A lot of the criticism that Guild Wars 2 gets, things like infinite gathering tools, things like the infinite salvage kits, those are all very nice quality of life items that people typically willfully buy, so that way they can use it on their account. And realistically, the way the gold to gem system works is like, yeah, okay, you could swipe for it, or you can grind for it. And that is a good system. He talks a little bit about loot boxes next. I'm going to just come out here and break the cope. They're going to have fucking loot box. They're going to have gotcha fucking loot boxes in this game, because they sell, because they make money. And I guarantee you, everybody at the studio hates that shit. They don't like it either, but they also like being able to pay their bills. So they're going to fucking put it in the game. That's just... It's a fact of life, right? So especially when you're talking about no subscription fees, no this, no that, I think that the way the Black Lion chest keys and all that stuff operate, they're pretty fair. You kind of know that you're wasting gold if you buy them, but they make money. I'm sure people get off work and they just got paid and they're like, yo, I'm gonna buy 2,000 gems. I'm gonna get a little bit of Black Lion keys rolling, right? Like, I never recommend it. I don't do that, but it's gonna be in the game. There's gonna be some cringe marketing shit in the game for sure.
This isn't necessarily a death sentence per se, but it does limit the scale of the game's audience significantly. MMO players don't tend to take kindly to this type of monetization, so any game that has or introduces it will have zero hope of ever being the next actually good,
So when it comes to pay to win, that is 100% true. Like, the actual pay to win, like swipe my credit card, get power, get best gear in game, that is true. The way that horizontal games are structured, though, is that you just kind of save time, and that goes for most battle passes. The battle pass problem comes with vertical progression MMOs because, like, I could pay and get a level 80 booster, but what does that save me? That saves me, like, it saves me a little bit of time because you get celestial gear. It saves you a little bit of time, like 15 hours, because you don't need to level. But battle passes are not necessarily a bad thing. Neither is like a just pay to advance system in a horizontal MMO, because there is a cap, right? Like, in games that there are no caps, it's like, okay, all the people that are low or no spenders end up playing the game at slow mode, and if you want to be competitive in any sense, you have to pay. And that's where the battle pass pay to win probably
popular MMO that we're looking for. On that note, I have good news. Guild Wars 1 and 2 are quite well known, notorious even, for being some of the most consumer-friendly MMOs out there, operating on a non-subscription fee, buy-to-play model. And while it's
I don't foresee them ever having a subscription fee. I think that there are ways that they could do a subscription fee. Frankly, I think that the player base of Guild Wars 2, if they came out and said, like, yeah, we're going to a subscription model, even if it is like $5 a month, it would turn everybody off. So I don't ever think that they are going to do it. I do think that they could do it. The only problem would be the subscription fee combined with cross-platform gaming. So we mentioned earlier in the video about cross-platform. Guild Wars 3 or whatever it is going to be on consoles. Now, you can tie it in if they made some deals with Microsoft, like through Xbox Game Pass or the various other cloud streaming services, that it's like, okay, like, we get a little bit of a, cut of that, and then if you play on PC, you subscribe to it. So you have to have a subscription of some sort to be able to play the game, whether it's a subscription to Game Pass or a subscription through ArenaNet. I do not see there ever being a subscription fee for ArenaNet products. That is like one of their founding tenants, which is unfortunate because it is a very stable monetization technique.
True that you can, of course, buy gold, cosmetics, and convenience items. The games thankfully do not have any elements that could be reasonably described as pay to win. I do have to mention that Guild Wars 2 does have loot boxes, and well, they are loot boxes, so even though you can just farm gold and buy almost everything in them, they are still loot boxes, which more or less define anti-consumer practices.
You could farm gold and buy basically everything in the game, and by virtue of that, you can also swipe your credit card for almost everything. So the pay to win argument, I already made my case, but it's it depends. Do you want to play the game, or do you just want to have a maxed out account? Like, if you were a oil sheik from Dubai or something, you could just swipe, have a maxed out account instantly.
But they are one of the most criticized parts of the game's monetization structure, and they've got ArenaNet in some hot water a couple of times. So I'd actually be pretty surprised if they actually made a return in Guild Wars 3. Let me cope. What I'm trying to get at here is that Guild Wars 3
is 100% cope. They're going to be there.
It will almost certainly be a very consumer-friendly game, operating similarly to Guild Wars 1 and 2. ArenaNet as a studio are very well known for holding high ethical standards when it comes to business practice, and as a mildly amusing side story, one of the major issues in Guild Wars 2's development was that they were giving a lot of their new content away for free, as long as you logged in while it was current. As you can imagine, that wasn't a very good idea for the bottom line, but I think it does shine a light on how ArenaNet don't want to nickel and dime their player base, perhaps even too much for their own good.
That is true. They are really bad at making money in a lot of cases. They're like the least corpa studio ever, because there's a lot of instances where it's like, so it's just free, just for like, all right, whatever. Like for me, like I don't know why they're giving it to me for free, but they are, whatever.
Little outside the scope of this video to talk about what I think Guild Wars 3 will be in detail, so to make sure I'm not talking forever and that I've got more content for later, I'll be brief. Guild Wars 3 is likely going to be a full action combat horizontal progression MMO, releasing on console and PC with a heavy open world exploration focus. PvP is unlikely to be a heavy focus because they tried that with Guild Wars 1 and 2, and it really didn't work.
They're probably going to have some elements. I would say they're probably only going to have like some kind of structured PvP game mode, and they're only going to have a very limited segment of that. So the way I see it is that if their PvP exists, it is going to be similar to what Heroes of the Storm was versus what Dota was or what League of Legends was. So Heroes of the Storm was more of just kind of like a fun party-esque, like, think of it like, it's not going to be competitive. It's going to be Mario Party. Like, it's going to be, hey, here's a PvP game mode. You can kind of go have some fun with that. And that's it. There's probably going to be a hard PvP, PvE like split on skills from launch if they have PvP in the game. And then they're going to just kind of branch that off, and it's just going to be like some side shit where it's not going to be nearly as developed. But it's like, oh yeah, by the way, there is PvP. It's just, it is what it is. It's something fun that you can kind of do.
Cal, super hot. Put it like this, I'll be very happy if the game has any significant PvP features in it.
They're probably not going to have the open world PvP. They're probably not going to have world versus world scale PvP. It's probably just going to be like, hey, random arenas type or team arenas, and you could just go in there and, maybe just structured PvP. As long as it all depends, right? Because part of the reason why Guild Wars 2 PvP is as bad as it is like clarity. It's really, really hard to interact with. Like, everybody just kind of goes in, blows their skills, and then unless you're having like a one-on-one situation on like a side node or you're roaming in world versus world, most PvP encounters are frustrating for people who are not super sweats at the game. And especially with how much bloat there is in the game now, you'll just get blown up without even knowing what happened. And so I think that if we have a new fresh start, they're probably going to try to keep that as reined in as possible and make sure that it actually functions to where you have some kind of competitive environment where you know what's happening to you and you know what you can do to counter it. Because that's kind of what Guild Wars 1 PvP was. In Guild Wars 1 PvP, it was kind of like a deck builder situation on your individual build, but there was a lot more clarity in like what was happening in Guild Wars 1 PvP, whereas in Guild Wars 2, it's just like there's just a giant ball of shit and you're stun locked into oblivion and you don't even know what happened.
The reason I think full action is for a few reasons. ArenaNet love making more action-style combat. You can see this as far back as Guild Wars 1 actually, which even then didn't have a global cooldown and was much more animation and cast time oriented than other games at the time. And this is massively increased in Guild Wars 2, which very much amped up the action.
Like, I mean, look at this ball, right? Do you know what skills anybody around you is casting at any given time? Like, absolutely not. Like, that's what PvP looks like. Like, how am I supposed to defend against one of these 4 people, and there's clones and there's all this other shit in there. So it's a mess.
So I think it's a natural progression. Also, it's going to be multi-platform. Multiple job listings mention the unannounced project being multi-platform, meaning console is a near certainty. And well, action combat and consoles kind of go hand in hand. As long as I get an interface that makes sense for PC and isn't entirely console first, I'm happy.
There's pretty good ways of doing it. They have like Expedition 33 and some of these other games that are like, hey, you should probably play this on controller. even Remnant 2, their interfaces are pretty intuitive, whether you're playing on mouse and keyboard or on controller.
The reason I think Guild Wars 3 will have an open world, exploration focus, and horizontal progression is because those are simply the ArenaNet trademarks at this point. It's how Guild Wars differentiates itself from other titles, and it's found great success in doing so. So there's an almost 0% chance they actually deviate from that formula too much. I think it's possible that progression is a little slower and more complex than in Guild Wars 2, because I do think a weakness of the game is that itemization isn't as interesting as it perhaps could be, but that remains to be seen, of course. While we're on the topic of what is a Guild Wars 3, I want to...
Itemization in Guild Wars 2 is such a weird thing. You just basically get max gear from 18 different places without even engaging with hardly any of the game. So it's really weird, because in other games it's like you're doing this dungeon or you're killing this raid boss because this item drops from him, like this thing that you want dropped. Whereas in Guild Wars 2, that thing doesn't actually do anything for you. Like it's like just a cosmetic item. So I would like to see more of like, you have to go, like if you want an ascended sword, like you need to go kill this monster and hope it drops for you. I think that kind of gearing, yeah, it can turn people off. People aren't gonna, there is no certainty, right? You're at the whim of RNG, but that's largely what games are for. Like that's what drives player interest in it. And you know, if you could just get full ascended gear from the Wizard's Vault, then why would you care if an ascended sword dropped from a raid boss? Like, okay.
Briefly address the Unreal in the room. I think game engines tend to get a bad rep when horribly optimized or just plain badly made games ship publicly using them, leading to players thinking that the engine itself is inherently problematic. Unity is a very good example of this. And while it's true that every game engine likely has strengths, weaknesses, and a whole array of foibles and quirks, I don't think Unreal Engine will be an issue. Quick reminder that Valorant, Arc Raiders, Throne and Liberty, Marvel Rivals, and Omega award-winning Clair Obscur are all built in Unreal, and they all...
So when it comes down to Unreal Engine, the reason why it's a good thing that ArenaNet is going to be building something in Unreal Engine, which we know that based on the job list, is that it's easier to get employee. Like if you've ever worked in any kind of tech industry, it is really, really hard when you have some experience with different, you know, whether it's coding languages or different equipment tech stuff. You might get thrown this piece of equipment that is like some old as fuck, like dilapidated thing that has either limited or no vendor support, and you have to figure it out. When it comes to Guild Wars 2's engine, it is a proprietary engine. So they'll get a new grad from college or a new hire that might have worked at Amazon or worked a different engine, and they have to basically relearn their entire situation. You know, it's like if every time you had to build anything, you had to use, if every time I made a video I had to learn a new editing software, it would be problematic and it increases time. Whereas if you use this kind of industry standard, you know, open out there engine where you can buy pre-made assets to include into your game, then it significantly lowers that dev timeline. So I think that it's a very good thing that they're using Unreal. I know that a lot of people are like, oh, everything looks the same. I just don't. I think that they don't know what they're talking. So I think it's good that they're using Unreal. And I think that it ultimately, the fact that they're using Unreal is going to, it's a sign that the game is going to be successful.
Mostly work. Throne and Liberty, funnily enough, is a particularly apt example.
Just from like the back end side of it, right? Just from the like Corpa, like how do I hire game dev side of it.
To bring up, because similar to Guild Wars 2, it features very high player counts and remains incredibly performant at the same time. There is also an idea that some engines make games all look the same, but that's very clearly not the case. You can just look at the list of games on the Unreal website. Developers can make the game look exactly how they want it to. At the end of the day, a game engine is simply a tool. If it's used well, the end result will be good. If it's not used well, the result will be uninspired slop. It's a sort of reversed survivorship bias. You'll only notice the engine being a problem when it's used badly. When everything is working well, you don't notice the engine at all. In conclusion, I'm very confident Guild Wars 3 is coming soon, and also that it will be a good game. To wrap things up, here's my predicted timeline for Guild Wars 3. August 2026, Guild Wars 2 Visions of Eternity is going to wrap up, and then very shortly after, Guild Wars 3 will be announced. Winter 2026 at some point, a Hall of Monuments style game bridge will be added to Guild Wars 2 to link to Guild Wars 3. 2027, we're going to have, I think, a lot of details released about Guild Wars 3, probably some beta weekends. There was kind of a similar thing during Guild Wars 2's pre-release, so I think we'll see that again. And then, of course, the big prediction. I think it will be an early to mid 2028 release. It could be late 2027 if you really enjoy Copium, though.
I think that it's gonna release before 2028. I think they're probably gonna try to line it up in Q4 of 2027. I think that's when it's gonna be released. Game Bridge. I think that we're it's pretty close. But I think by the Q4 of 2027, we're gonna be able to log in and play Guild Wars 3 for sure. Now, if we don't, that's fine. Like I said, I would rather have them cook it and it be good and it's released in 2028 or 2029. But realistically, I think that we're significantly farther along at this point in time than people give credit, because there would have been more communication from the studio to kind of buy time, right? We've been buying time. We would have bought more time by now if we weren't further along.
There are a lot more things that I want to talk about when it comes to speculating about Guild Wars 3, from the combat system to game modes, progression systems, and also what the future of Guild Wars 2 looks like. Those, though, are topics for another time, but I'll do my best to cover every question mark that I can find. While you're waiting for that, if you want more details, then I'd highly recommend joining the Guild Wars 3 Discord and subreddit. There are some very diligent people there who have been collecting every single breadcrumb of information that exists, and it's all laid out in glorious detail for you to absorb. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned. It's going to be a very interesting year for MMOs ahead of us. I'll see you next time. Like, comment, subscribe.
All right, so that was it. That was Mighty Teapot's coverage of Guild Wars 3, kind of a history lesson. I know a lot of people expected him to like straight up announce Guild Wars 3, which is hilarious, but that is part of the reason why I make the videos that I do and I talk about some of the topics that I do, is because I'm pretty in tune with kind of the happenings of the studio. Like I've been following this game. I've been playing Guild Wars 1 came out. Been playing Guild Wars 2 since it came out. I've been invested into this IP and franchise for the majority, of my adolescence into my adult life. So I'm very curious to see where they bring it, and looking forward to the future. I think that ultimately it is a good thing. Like, I think that Guild Wars 3 or Guild Wars Mistbound or whatever the studio decides to call it, I think that it is a necessary thing for them to do for the success of their studio. And I'm hoping that they have taken a minute to look at the mistakes of the past to ensure that they don't get repeated in this new fresh start. You don't want to start with a nice fresh canvas and make a mistake right at the beginning. Like, you want it to be, pretty flushed out and pretty nice and serviceable, right? So that way you don't fuck it up, because the last thing we want is Guild Wars 3 to come out, it bombs, we have to figure it out, revert back to Guild Wars 2 or do some crazy. So anyway, I've been talking for a while. We watched the video, tried to add as much commentary as I can. This is like my first time doing any kind of React content. Shout out Mighty Teapot for making the video. I'll link the video in a pinned comment if you wanted to rewatch it or check it out without my commentary. But yeah, that's gonna be it for me. I hope everybody has a great day, great week ahead of them, and like, comment, all that stuff. Hope you enjoyed. I'll catch you next time.